YouTube. Sorry. Hello, YouTube. What's new? What's new with me? I'm doing NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, which means I'm going to be writing a 50k novel, which is 50,000 words, in a month. I've hit 10k officially, and I'm on track to finish by the end of November. I'm rewriting a novel that I wrote like 25k of, so I never finished it in high school. However, I'm rewriting this novel without actually looking back at what I already wrote. So really, the only thing that's the same between the novel I'm currently writing and the one I wrote in high school is a very similar concept of the main villain. Everything else is completely different. Also, what's new, my next video will be my Themis versus Barbary video and giving my thoughts and opinions on that and which one I think is better. So hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Lauren. I'm the girl who failed the bar exam and put it on the internet for everybody to know about. Still waiting on results from the October exam. Doesn't surprise me, Texas takes forever to do anything except for count election votes. And I got an election joke in there. Yes, I did. So if you're here for law school videos, this isn't the video for you. This is a video about School of Rock, hence my lovely Queen t-shirt. Because I don't have a School of Rock t-shirt, but I like to be themed for these musical videos. So if you've noticed me looking over here, it's because I have notes, because these videos tend to go long. So we're gonna try not to have that happen. So today's video, I'm going to be comparing all three versions of School of Rock, because yes, there are three and not two. Hence why I'm really worried about this video being long, because I have to talk about the original movie, the musical, and the television show. So let's get started. So School of Rock was a movie that was released in 2003 starring Jack Black. It was adapted for Broadway and West End by Andrew Lloyd Webber, who wrote the music, among a few other people who helped write the words, and I think the book. I don't remember who wrote the book, but either way, Andrew Lloyd Webber is the name that is like mostly associated with the musical. And then in and that was adapted in 2015. In 2016, the television show for School of Rock came to Nickelodeon, and ran until 2018, lasting 3 seasons. And if you're wondering what else was on air on Nickelodeon at the time, their other really big show was a show called Nicky, Ricky, Dicky, and Dawn. And you're like, why are you mentioning this? If you watched The Umbrella Academy, 5 was on Nickelodeon during that time, just to give you some context of how old these kids are in the TV show. So they're like middle school aged, which is, yeah, I'll get to that in a bit. So the story of School of Rock follows Dewey Finn, an out-on-his-luck rocker who manages to get himself a substitute teaching position at a very prestigious prep school, where he realizes the students in his class have much more potential than the teachers or their parents realize. So that's the basis of School of Rock. There will be about 6 sections to this review. I'm really sorry, I couldn't figure out how to make it any shorter. And with that being said, I'm going to be looking over here at my notes to make sure I stay on topic. Additionally, there will be spoilers, so I'm not sorry, but it's bound to happen. Alright, so the sections that I'm going to do are like talking about the movie specifically, the show, the musical specifically, and the TV show specifically. Then I'm going to talk about the 3 different Deweys that we see throughout the 3 mediums. I'm going to talk about some other things in the adaptations, like the adults and the kids. And then I'm going to do like my closing thoughts and stuff. And at the end of the video, I will say which one I think is better. So if you're waiting for that, skip to the end or watch my reasoning for why I think the one I think is the best So let's start with the movie. I want to start this out by saying I'm not the biggest Jack Black fan. I've never found him really funny. I think the only movie besides School of Rock that I like of his is the very first Kung Fu Panda movie. So take that as you will. I didn't really feel like Jack Black was playing a character, nor did I feel like he was playing himself. Wow, sorry, it went down the wrong pipe. However, I will say he had some really strongly acted scenes, and I'll get into that in a little bit. I wasn't a fan of how the movie totally utilized only rock music for all of the background music. It does work. It's a movie about rock. However, you don't get any juxtaposition of the different settings. It all feels like a big rock concert rather than setting Horace Green apart from the rest of the world, which I think is a downfall of the movie. The jam sessions in the classroom, they felt pretty organic. The kids I felt like the kids didn't always know what to do, but then again, they're acting with Jack Black, so what are you supposed to do? Tamika's storyline in the movie is probably the best besides Freddie's in the movie. I mean, they're the only two that you really get expanded on out of all the students. But her storyline is my favorite, and I will talk about that a little bit later when I talk about the kids specifically. The actress who plays Ned's girlfriend in the movie can't act. She's still a person that I'm very glad that he leaves, and she's still rude, but she can't act. She was horrible. I don't know how she was cast. She's a bad actress. I like the non-romantic ending in the movie, and I'll talk more about that when I discuss the musical, because the musical does the thing that most musicals tend to do. And I'll discuss that later. I love the opening credits. I'm always a fan of opening credits that are really creative, that aren't just like sweeping shots with names popping up, like fading in and out. I love that they utilized the posters in the bar area that they were in, and like utilized the typography to create the logos and even Jack Black's name. I loved that they did that. I wish more movies did that. I find it very intriguing. It pulls you into the world of the movie a lot better than just sweeping shots with names fading in and out. Summer isn't actually a bad singer in the movie, which didn't surprise me because it's Miranda Cosgrove. I know she can sing. However, in every other adaptation, Summer is stated that she cannot actually sing. The thing is, the reason why she is stated as not a singer in the movie is because of the song she chooses, which is Memory, which isn't a bad song objectively, but it's also Cats, and Cats is going to be polarizing no matter what you do about it. I also find it really funny that it was Cats that was chosen in the movie when we think about who adapts the movie to the musical. I just find that really funny. I find that little connection, because I thought that was actually written in for Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's not. It was in the original movie, which I thought was very clever, but like, it just hits home when you realize Andrew Lloyd Webber is the one that adapts it to the musical version. So yeah, that's all I have for the movie, really. I'll get into more details about it later. But overall, the movie wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. I really liked it. There were some poignant moments that I really enjoyed that you don't get to see in any of the other mediums, but it was still really good. So let's get on to the musical. So I love musicals, as we all know. I want to preface this by saying the musical version I saw of the show was not one with Alex Brightman or Sierra Bodges. It was with Justin Collette and Mamie, I forgot her last name, but she was in Cats. And I thought Justin did a very good job. So I will say, when I talk about Dewey, for the most part, I'm going to be referencing Justin's performance, but I've seen enough of Alex through the Broadway.com videos and through various performances that he's done to be able to give a kind of a idea of what his Dewey was like. Justin is a very similar Dewey to him. So yeah. So all the kids I saw in the performance I watched, of course, my dogs are being let out. Of course they are. Love it. Anyways, sorry about my dogs. Anyways, all the kids I saw, save for I think Lawrence, were all the original Broadway cast kids, and I did see a Broadway version. And I'm going to talk more about that when I talk about the kids specifically. They were all talented. They were all super great. Don't have enough good things to say about them. Principal Mullins wasn't played by Sierra Bodges. She was played by Mamie. And I do have thoughts on this. And I love Sierra Bodges. I've heard her version of Where Did All the Rock Go? I like Mamie's version better because I think Mamie actually gets under the notes better than Sierra. They're both known for doing Andrew Lloyd Webber things, but Mamie has an ability to hit these notes with a gruffness that is needed to make it not sound as pretty. She sounds more like she used to rock, which is perfect for Principal Mullins. And it's also why Mamie makes a really good Grisabella and why Sierra makes a really good what's Christine Daae. Why Sarah makes a good Christine where she probably wouldn't make a good Rosabella. So no offense to Sierra, I know she's amazing, but I prefer Mamie. So Andrew Lloyd Webber helped write the music, and I think, I said this with Billy Elliot, the writing, making this story a musical really is beneficial. There are certain aspects that are helped a lot by the music. You're in the Band and Stick It to the Man are the two obvious ones. I know Stick It to the Man has a song in the movie. I don't remember the name of the song. It's kind of forgettable, to be honest. But in the show, those two songs really stick out because they make what happens in the movie a little bit faster, but also it just like punches in home that this is a rock band, you know? The music helps punch in the moment for you so you think about it, which is really important. So yeah, the music just really helps in this, and I'm not gonna lie, I watched the musical first before refreshing myself on the movie because I haven't seen the movie in literal years. And when watching the movie, I did miss, like when they were going through the You're in the Band moment, I did kind of miss the music, the musical version, because it's just such a catchy song. I love the tonal shift that the musical creates with having the Horace Green song. It really sets apart Dewey's world and the kids' world. That's something that the movie missed. That's also something that the TV show doesn't have, but the TV show does it in a slightly different way. So yeah. I love that the musical does have a slightly bigger focus on the kids and that you get to see more of their home life than you do in the movie. I really appreciate that. And they do this and they don't lose any scenes that were important in the movie. All the scenes in the movie are basically in the musical, but there's added stuff. And usually that doesn't happen in a musical. Usually they have to take stuff out, but they added stuff in that affected you in a positive way. It didn't negatively affect the plot like adding stuff into Newsies did. So yeah, I've already talked about Stick It to the Man. Works better as an actual song in the musical than it does in the movie version. I don't remember the movie version of the song. I know that what's his name? Zach has a part in it, a bigger part in it, but I don't really remember much. So yeah. I think this musical probably would have won a Tony if it had been up in the Tony Awards any other year, but it went against Hamilton. It didn't stand a chance. Granted, I've never seen Hamilton, so I can't really say. I just know that Hamilton won all the Tonys that year. The musical has pretty much the same plot as the movie. There's a few added scenes with the kids. So yeah. I love and I hate the end of the show. I hate that Ned gets back together with his girlfriend, who is absolutely horrible. She's a trash person. But it's a musical and everybody always gets together at the end of a musical, which I think is utter crap. That shouldn't happen. I don't get why musicals feel the need to have everybody, like every plot end perfectly or every plot even have an ending. The musical would have been fine without those extra scenes, but they still had them and it just ruined it. And I love and I hate the Principal Mullins and Dewey Finn relationship. I will say that because the scene with Principal Mullins at the bar where she sings Where Did All the Rock Go is extended and you get to see a bit more of their relationship than you do in the movie, it makes more sense for them to have a kiss, but they don't move farther like Jack and Catherine do in Newsies. But at the same time, I'm mixed about it, because I don't think it was necessary, but it wasn't completely out of left field, and it did feel a bit more natural for that kiss to happen. So that's all for the musical. Let's move on to the television show. So yes, I watched all 3 seasons of a kids TV show. It was 30-minute episodes in there, and the first 2 seasons had 10 episodes. The last season had 20, and then it was canceled. And from the last I read, they were still looking for a network to pick it up, but now all the kids are like 19, so they're way too old. Either way, I think a 4th season would have been nice, because it ended, the show itself ended very similarly to the musical, but there was still plot holes that I wish they had tied up. And I think they could have, especially since they knew it was probably going to be canceled early on in the season, they could have rewritten a few episodes to make it a bit better in terms of how the show actually ended. A lot of people dismiss the show because it's Nickelodeon, and I think that does it a disfavor. The show isn't written for people like me. The show is written for kids, and you always have to consider the audience and the marketing when thinking about things like this. This is a show written for kids on a kids network. It's not going to appeal to everybody. But it's not a terrible show either. It's not the horrible adaptation everybody thinks it is. Yes, there are pop songs, but also remember, the demographic is like 10-year-olds. Sorry, I'm going to get a drink of water. Yeah, the demographic is like 10-year-olds, guys. They're not going to cater towards people who actually like rock music. They just can't do that. In fact, the one like rock song they sing is a ballad ironically from Queen in like the 3rd season when Summer learns to play guitar magically. But again, I'll talk about that when I talk about the kids, because there's some issues there. The show does have a heavy focus on the kids, and it has a heavy focus on the 6 main kids in the band, including Summer, which is good, but it's also very detrimental because it just leaves out the extras. Like, I feel so bad for the extras in this show because they are just cast aside half the time. It makes you realize when you look at the other medians just how important the full band was, but also what Nickelodeon focuses on, which is the main girls, and then the guys are comedic effect, which is really sad. Sorry for the coughing. So the adults in the show are also done for comedic effect, which is to its detriment. But that's how all these kids shows are done nowadays. They can't have the plots be evened out. It has to be what it is. So I will say there were some things that I found funny. Ironically, there was a Hamilton episode where Tamika writes a Hamilton-inspired musical based on the Alamo. And considering the musical history, I find that funny that they did a Hamilton-based episode. When Hamilton is what beat out School of Rock at the Tonys. So let's go on to the plot of the show. Plot-wise, the first season pretty much follows the movie plot. The only main difference is there's a few added subplots, but also they win Battle of the Bands, which, take it or leave it, it is what it is. It's Nickelodeon. They weren't ever going to lose Battle of the Bands. There is issue with Battle of the Bands in that they are locked out from going to it by their villain band counterpart that isn't actually Dewey's band. But yeah. And I'll talk more about some other things with that later. I will say also, nobody finds out that they're School of Rock at the end of the first season. The only time people find out that they're School of Rock is through one of the main villains of the show, which is Clark. He's a kid. He's essentially the Billy of the show without being Billy. And then you have Principal Mullins, who doesn't find out till the end of season 3, which is where you get the more traditional School of Rock ending of what the movie and musical do. But also it's different, and that it's not at Battle of the Bands, it's at like essentially the Austin City Limits equivalent for this show, because the show does take place in Austin, but they obviously can't use ACL as like their festival, so they do a different, it's like Austin Music Fest or something like that. But they get revealed there, and they're not wearing the uniforms. Like, it's just there's a lot with it. There's a lot with the uniforms too, which I will talk about later when I mention Billy and Clark later. So also with the finale of the show in season 3, the parents don't find out, which is why I say there should be a season 4, because I think it would be interesting to actually pull the parents back in for that final season, since they were there in season 1 and actually at the beginning of season 3 with Freddie's mom. Most of the other differences I will talk about in the kids section, because that is where the show differs so much from the musical and the movie. Some other small differences I noted were the school in the show is called William Travis Prep, where in the musical and the movie it's Horace Green. I don't know why there's a change there. The show actually gives us a city for where it takes place, which is Austin. The movie and musical, to my knowledge, don't do that. And I get why they chose Austin, because Austin is a musical capital. It's a music capital. Also, something that surprised me was that the classroom setting in the show is almost like a perfect match to what we see in the movie. So that is something that they did very well. They even got the color of the doors the same, guys. So yeah, let's go on to the Deweys. So the first Dewey we have is Jack Black. He set the standard. I said it earlier, I felt like he wasn't himself and he wasn't playing a character. It was somewhere in that weird in between, but it was likable. He had really good acted moments, especially when he was being a mentor to the kids. But other than that, it was kind of meh on his acting. And he can sing, but when you hear the musical and you hear how some of the stuff could have sounded, you realize he's not the best singer and he's not the best rocker. He does a really good job with it though, but when you hear actual music trained vocalists sing it, you realize, oh wow, it could sound so much better. And I don't want to like slight Jack Black, but I'm sorry, dude. And like Jack Black admits it. He's like, I couldn't do what they're doing. Let's talk about Alex Brightman and the stage Deweys. Actually, before I do this, back to the show. The show actually has the van in it, the van from the movie. Musical doesn't. I just wanted to add that in. All right, back to the Deweys. So Alex Brightman set the standard for the musical Deweys, and I'm going to talk about all of them kind of like in an umbrella thing. I will say it's a mixed bag. Some are really good, some aren't. I saw a Macy's Thanksgiving Day performance one where they're like on their stage performing instead of like at the parade, and the Dewey there was just bad. Like, he was awkward. I think they lowered the octave. I think they lowered the register of the song, and it wasn't the best. I will say they're typically better at singing than Jack Black, and they have a better base in music, even though it's singing the same stuff. Like, the best way I can describe this is that You Can't Stop the School of Rock little riff that Jack Black does in the movie, I feel like it's done way better in the musical, and it's carried out in different scenes through the musical, and it just sounds better in the musical. When it comes to like emulating Jack Black, neither Alex nor Justin, from what I've seen, actually copied Jack Black. They definitely took inspiration from him, but they made Dewey their own, which I thought was really impressive. Dewey in the musical is way more animated. He is way more out there, and I get it, it's because it's on stage, but it does make him seem a little more jokey, but also it works really well, especially when the part is well acted. Alex and the Deweys in the show tend to do a really good job of showcasing the entire band, and I'll talk about this when I talk about the kids. But at the end, right before they do the official curtain call, the Dewey, whoever's playing Dewey, will introduce all the kids in the band, and they always introduce Katie, which I have a whole thing about. Yeah, and that's my next point. The musical is the only one to really focus on Katie any bit more. Like, Katie's shunted, basically. But the musical actually focuses on her a little bit and gives her a few more lines. So yeah, and now we have, I think his last name is Cavallaro, but his name is Tony Cavallaro. He plays the Dewey on the TV show. Tony's Dewey is actually tonally very similar to Jack Black's Dewey, and I see a lot of people hate on him for it, and I'm like, he's basically doing what Jack Black did. Like, you shouldn't be mad at him for his writing being bad, because he did what he could with the writing, but he's written as a joke. That's what adults are in the Nickelodeon shows. They're just there for gags, which is really sad. Like, you have these talented actors and then you use them for a gag. It's sad. Tony isn't the leader of School. He isn't the lead singer of School of Rock. He's really just a background singer, and he plays rhythm guitar, which I understand why they did that. It's for marketability. They need the kids in the front, but also it's like, the show isn't just about the kids. Tony does a good performance for what he's given, but he's also written as a joke, and so he can't do much beyond that. Tony's Dewey, something that I really appreciated about the show is Tony's Dewey is the only Dewey that works on getting his teaching license, because the end of season 3 or the end of season 2, since the kids aren't found out, Tony's Dewey still works at the school, and has a more permanent position at the school. So he actually has to get his teaching license, and he actually agrees to do it, and I find that really honorable, because he's not completely giving up his dream of rock, but he's also realizing he can do more with rock. However, this plot point isn't really brought up again, and I find that really sad, because it's a good plot point in my opinion, because Dewey is a good teacher. Like, let's just get that out there. He's really good with working with kids. He gets through to him, and honestly, when you think about it, when you talk about rock and roll, you cannot not talk about history. Like, they just kind of go hand in hand. I had a course in college that dealt exactly with that, history and rock and roll. So just leaving that there. So it's not like the kids weren't learning. They were. It was just in a different lens than they had before. We find out more about Tony's home life, around Dewey's home life through Tony's version of Dewey. And it's outside of Ned, because there is no Ned in the School of Rock on the TV, in the show. In the show, he's introduced as Mr. Finn, not as Mr. Schneebly, so the Schneebly plot is like gone. And Ned is like replaced by by Dewey's parents in the TV show. So we get to find out a little bit more about that and how his parents look at him. And then, like, though, Tony's Dewey isn't as bad as people want him to be. So yeah, let's talk about the adults now. Across all 3 mediums, Principal Mullins is almost the exact same. She's a bit more comedic in the show, but in terms of like looks and personality and how they behave, across all 3 mediums, she's almost the same. Like, if you put a picture, like I would if I did editing, but I don't. If you put a picture of all 3 of them like up against each other, they would all look the same. You would know immediately that they are Principal Mullins, which I think is like hilarious that 3 separate actresses can portray this character in such a way that is so notable. Ned and his girlfriend don't exist, which I'm not mad about. Ned was kind of like a pushover anyways. I don't think he's the greatest character, but his girlfriend can definitely like leave the house and not come back. she is such an unlikable character, and I hate her redemption in the musical. The only parents we visibly see in the TV show are Freddie's mom in season 3 when he has to potentially leave and go to Miami. And then we see Zach's dad in season 1, very similar to what we see in the movie, which is Zach's dad being controlling and all that fun stuff. But we get a bit more, we know a bit more about the kids' lives though, because they have more dialogue, significantly more dialogue. So we know that some of them have siblings and all that kind of stuff. In the musical, we get to see vignettes of, I believe, Billy, Freddie, Zach, and Tamika. We get to see what their home lives are like, and then everybody else is just kind of like sprinkled in, which I see good and bad with, but I'm never going to be completely happy unless I get to see what all the kids' home lives are like, just to let you know. But yeah, the other teachers exist in the show for like one plot, one episode, you know, it's nothing like serious, but they're really relegated to background characters, just like they are in the movie and the musical. Movie and musical, they have a bit more say because they do gossip, which I kind of missed, but it's a show about kids. Like, they're not going to show adults because apparently kids can't comprehend adults. Nickelodeon has problems with that. So does Disney for if I'm going to be stating stuff like that. I'm reading like my notes to make sure I'm doing stuff. The other bands. So in the show and musical, the only other band we really see is Dewey's X band. And we see that in the TV show. Did I say the show? In the movie and the musical, we only really see Dewey's X band. We see his X band very, very briefly. In I think it's the series finale, and then we see it very briefly in season 1, episode 1, and season 1, the finale. One of Dewey's X band members is Pete Wentz. So take that as you will. He doesn't appear again in the series finale. That's kind of like a different band, but they do take the plot of like getting in a new guitarist for the final episode of the series. That doesn't happen in the season 1 finale. The season 1 Battle of Bands finale, their focus there is on a separate band completely, which is led by Kendall, who is of BTR fame, Big Time Rush. So I love that, obviously. I love Kendall. I love Big Time Rush. So that's a fun little cameo for people like me watching the show who watched Big Time Rush. However, it's a lackluster season finale, and I'll talk a bit more about why later. But they're the big villain, that band is. They lock the School of Rock out, which is why they have to like perform on a rooftop, and then the School of Rock eventually wins Battle of Bands. It doesn't make you feel anything. What else was I gonna say? Also, Kendall looks like the replacement guitarist in the movie, which I find really funny. So yeah, Dewey's band name is also changed for jokes in the TV show. It's not No Vacancy like it is in the movie and the musical. I want to say it's like Dewey and the Finns or something like that. And then the name that he wants is Paradox for the band, and then it becomes School of Rock. So I just thought I'd say that. Alright, so finally we're at the kids. So this is mainly going to address the TV show because the movie and musical are more or less the same when it comes to the kids' personalities and their treatment and their lines. The only exception is Katie. Katie gets a few more lines in the musical. We get a little bit more of her personality in the musical. I'll talk more about her in a bit. So, in the TV show, I think I said it before, the kids are probably more middle school age than elementary school age. So take that as you will. So I first want to talk about the kids that aren't actually in the musical portion of the band. So like the roadies, the security guys, the lights, Billy, they don't exist in the show, which is so sad, and it shows you how much Nickelodeon only cares about their big names. The extras are just there to fill out the classroom. They don't do anything else with them, which is so sad. Like, you could have these extras actually be doing stuff, but like most of the time on the show, the main cast don't even interact with the extras in the classroom. And I'm like, these are your classmates who know your secret, and you're the only character that is there kind of is Billy, and he has a different name, Clark, and he has a different role. He's a villain who wants to end School of Rock. But the reason why I say that he's kind of there is the personality of Clark and Billy are basically the same. I think the show would have done better with a Billy type character, but it is what it is. Also, Billy's part in the show is more or less useless because the uniforms on the show are so all over the place. Like, there's no uniformity to them. That the actual final costume that the band wears at Battle of the Bands, it's supposed to be like the distressed version of the school uniforms, looks almost exactly like what they wear to school, because there's no discernible difference, because there's no actual clean-cut uniform that the kids are wearing. And I think that is a detriment. That is what all shows that are on Nickelodeon and Disney do when their cast has to wear a uniform. They don't actually want them wearing a uniform because that's boring. So they have to add all this extra stuff, but it defeats the purpose of the band's costumes. Also, they only wear that uniform costume once, which I think is a mistake because they're called School of Rock. Wearing a school uniform, you know, it makes sense. The rest of the kids, the parts are all placed onto Lawrence, the keyboardist. So like your security camera, that whole plot is placed onto Lawrence. Also the light show placed onto Lawrence, and later when the band actually starts recording stuff, that is also placed onto Lawrence, which, cool, he's a nerd, we get it, but like, you could have given that to another kid. You could have given that part to another kid, and you didn't. It's a missed opportunity. Especially since, like, Dewey's supposed to inspire all the kids, not just the ones that are in the band. So, yeah. So let's talk about Lawrence, since I just mentioned him. Lawrence very much starts out the same across all the mediums. But in the show, he's quickly shown to be best friends with Zach and Freddie from a very young age, so he's not the alienated nerd that he is in the movie and musical, which I think is a mistake. I think they could have built that friendship up easily. It would have tied in better with a really good plot with Freddie having to leave and then stay with Lawrence, but it is what it is. Show Lawrence is also way more confident than the movie and musical counterparts. And you don't really get to hear much about his family, but you do know that his mom is very supportive of him from what he says, which is very different from the movie and musical. Then we have Zach. Zach's last name is changed, which I understand because Lance Lim, who plays Zach, is Korean, so they changed Zach's name to Kwon from Mooneyham, which I think is fine. I strongly prefer the Zach on the show than in both the movie and the musical, because both the movie and the musical, no matter who's playing him, he's kind of boring. Yes, he writes, what is it? What's the final song? What's it called? I don't remember what he writes the final song. Zach in the show doesn't write as many songs, but granted, they're doing covers most of the time anyways. And the one song he does write, he writes with Tamika. But there is a scene in season 3 where he creates a song from hearing different raindrops, which I think is really creative, and it plays very much into who Zach is as a character from all 3 mediums. I just find him better in the show. I think he has way more personality in the show, and that's because of the writing. Freddie, another last name change. Freddie's normal name, I don't remember what it is. Like, all the characters have last names in the musical. They don't in the movie. But Freddie does get a last name change in the show because, and I don't remember what it is either, but it is changed because Ricardo, the actor that plays Freddy in the show, is Latino, so it's another name change that I'm not mad about. Freddy is another character that in the show I just strongly prefer. He's more fleshed out than in the movie and musical, but he's still, at his base, he's still very much the same. He's still questioning things and then being like, okay, let's do it. He's not as into the band stuff as the movie Freddy, but he, like, who he is as a base character is still very much the same, and I very much appreciate that. I think Ricardo did a really good job there with keeping Freddy true to what we know Freddy is, and then adding in his own stuff. In the movie, Freddy's hair is like kind of a joke, because he starts changing it, but they make it this is a joke they like continuously bring up throughout the show, and when you know the history of the movie Freddy with his hair, it's hilarious that they like, his hair is like a joke kind of thing, and keeping his hair perfect is like a joke in the show. I would say Freddy's character is most consistent across all three mediums. So now we have Summer in both, and all three versions of School of Rock plays clarinet. In the show, she acts as a background singer both before and after it's found out that she can't sing, which, okay. Like in the musical, she actually is tone deaf and cannot sing. However, the actress can, and I will make a point of this in a bit. And the actress can sing actually really well, just like Miranda Cosgrove and just like the actress I saw who played Summer in the musical. Summer gets a solo in the musical, which is about organizing stuff, which is perfect for Summer, but also it's like, why have Summer actually not be able to sing when you give her a solo? Just say that it's because it's cats, you know? Do what the movie did. In the show, to fix Summer's inability to sing, they hypnotize her, and then it's never addressed again, which, cool, but when you're not worried about backup singers, why even worry about it anyways? Summer's also band manager, but that's only brought up when it's needed for plot reasons. It's never really enforced. But she is still the overachieving girl, which I appreciate. However, there are times where she wears like pink dresses in the show, and I'm like, that's not a uniform, girl, stop. She also has a crush on Freddy in the show, which ends up being requited later on in like season 3, and that's like her whole arc in season 3 is her and Freddy are crushing on each other, which, okay, it's a Nickelodeon show, you have to have some kind of something like that. So let's talk about Tamika. She has my favorite story in the movie because I relate to being the fat kid. So I related to that so much. But that is taken away in the musical, and she's just the shy kid. Okay. Also, Tamika in the movie sings the best out of all the Tamikas. Sorry. But in the TV show, Tamika's story is like gone, because Tamika in the show is also combined with Katie, which, why? I will not get it. Tamika is basically the lead singer in all three mediums aside from Dewey. And no offense to Brianna, who plays Tamika in the show, but show Tamika has no business being the lead singer. I'm sorry. She just doesn't have the strong enough voice that we know and we equate with Tamika. So honestly, like, Summer should be the lead singer. Like, Jade, who plays Summer in the show, is a better singer in general. She has a stronger voice. I know that Brianna is more of an alto singer, which I relate to, but she doesn't have a strong alto voice. It's like she doesn't know how to support herself, so she sounds very rough when she's singing. So yeah. Tamika in the show plays bass, much like Katie does in the musical and movie, and I will explain when I talk about Katie. I will explain why this irritates me. Tamika in the show has none of the problems that Tamika in the musical or movie had. The only reason she doesn't want to sing lead is because she wants it to go to Summer, which, who cares? And the only reason, and like, her only like emoting issue when she plays bass is bass face, whatever that is. And it's like she over emotes, so it's just like, why? Like, why even give her problems that are so superficial when they don't exist? All right, you could have given her different ones, you know? All right, so let's talk about Katie. Katie's written out of the TV show to give to Tamika, and I'm like, you could have cast a third girl, because you already had 3 boys. You could have cast a third girl. There was no problem there with casting a third girl who can play bass, or have Brianna play actually Katie and then have a different girl play Tamika, which is what should have happened. Like, why did you do this, Nickelodeon? Like, what's the deal? I don't want to say why I think you did this, but like, why'd you do it, Nickelodeon? In the musical, that's probably the medium where we get the most about Katie herself, rather than Tamika, the Tamika-Katie hybrid that the show tried to give us. The show shows that she likes to wear ribbons in her hair. She's a bit girly. She's the one that in the musical, she comes up with the name the Koala Bears instead of it being all the roadies who do that. Or all the, not roadies, the, what is it? The fans. Groupies. The groupies do all that in the movie, but in the musical, Katie comes up with the koala bear name. She has ribbons in her hair. She has trouble emoting, like most Katies do. Like, that's one of the things that is shown throughout, is that Katie's have had trouble emoting. So she's kind of girly, and actually this is true to what I see in the movie. In the movie, she kind of ends but all the performances she's in with like a little that, which is kind of girly to me. Which I'm not mad at. So yeah, she actually gets introduced and has a bass solo moment in the musical, which, where was that in the movie? Like, in the movie, we go through every single member of the band except for Katie in the final credit scene, which, what the heck, Jack Black? You talked about everyone but Katie? Why is Katie getting shunted to the side? I want to know. Like, she is my favorite character just because no one seems to care about her. Katie just deserves better. Okay, so let's go back to general. In general, the musical probably does the best job at showing the reality that the kids are under, the pressures that they're under from both their school and their parents. The TV show comes close, but it still just barely misses that mark because the home lives don't seem as stressful, even though it should. And it's usually played off for comedic purposes instead of actual serious reasons. The most serious the show gets is when they talk about Zach's dad in that first season, and they don't really ever go back to that tone, which I think the show needed. It needed more of a balance, but it's Nickelodeon. Kids shows never do that. I learned a lot about the kids through dialogue, like Summer in the TV show. Summer's an only child. Zach has a brother. Tamika has siblings. We don't learn about that kind of stuff at all from any of the other mediums because the show does focus on the kids a bit more, which isn't terrible, but it focuses almost too much on the kids. The show gets it right in fleshing out the characters, but also it misses the mark a few times because it dilutes a lot of the important stuff to be comedy, which isn't bad, but also, like, it is. So let's talk about the best of each of the mediums. We have the musical, which is aided by songs, which very much helps. It's like what I said with Billy Elliot. The music just helps punctuate certain moments and makes you remember them more and makes you feel for them more. And the message that certain scenes are conveying is just better done through music than through straight up lines. Like I said, You're in the Band is a really good song and it conveys the message of what's going on way better than the scenes from the movie and the show do, because both of them have that scene, but the musical just knocks it out of the park with that song. So in the TV show, I love in season 2 because Dewey actually goes to try to get his teaching license. I said that I love this plot point. It means so much that Dewey is willing to learn how to do both things. He loves these kids and he loves rock, and he's learning how to do both. And I really love that for him, but it's also like dropped. So that's so sad. I also think the show does a better job of showing the classroom dynamic, right? Like the movie and the musical, the kids are basically like shells of characters, but in the show you actually get to see them all interact with each other, which is something, even if it's just the main kids in the band interacting and not interacting with the extras, but you still get to see that, which you don't really get to see in either of the other two mediums. The movie, it set the standard. I like the montage of them learning all the stuff because you get to see a passage of time that is kind of hard to see in the musical, and even though the show you do get it because it's episodic, it's still kind of hard to see how much time passes. I also like the lack of romance in the typical everybody gets what they want at the end of a musical, because I hate when musicals do that. So yeah, so which is best? I first want to say that we shouldn't ignore the TV show for what it gives us and for what it does, and for introducing music, and even though it's not technically introducing rock, but introducing that teachers do care about their students to kids and how they can be positive influences, because we have to acknowledge the audience really is kids, and the marketing is for kids, even though it's kind of off a little bit because it's Nickelodeon. But yeah, the movie, being the medium that it is, could have afforded more of a split focus on Dewey and the kids, and it doesn't do that. And I think that is the reason why I prefer the musical, besides the fact that the musical has songs that punch in the moments a lot harder than the scenes in the movie. We get that split, we get that nice evenness of Dewey's life and the kids' lives, and you get that, and I love that. Where the show goes too far with the kids, the movie goes too far with Dewey, and the musical brings them both together in a really harmonious way. So also the musical just has a more fulfilling end because you actually get to see the kids meeting back up with their parents at the end, which the movie doesn't do, and I find that really sweet because it's a really sweet moment in the musical. So that is it. School of Rock the musical is the best version of School of Rock in my opinion, and I gave you all my reasons why. I gave you reviews of them, or I hope I did. So that's all I have for you today. If you want to see another video based on a musical, or that is a musical movie adaptation type thing, let me know down below. Let me know what musical movie you want me to do, because there are a few, like Legally Blonde and Matilda. So let me know if you want to see any of those. Let me know what other types of videos you want to see. If you're here for a law video, let me know that too. If you liked the video, then tell me down below. Like the video, because that'll push this through the algorithm. Comment if you want. Subscribe, please. If you want to see more videos from me, that's the way to do it. And you'll also be hopefully notified when I make a new video. I think you have to hit the bell. Do I even get the bell when I only have like 25 subscribers? Who knows? YouTube's weird. So that's all I have. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, week, month, year, whenever you're watching this, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!